Listen up, Florida. This is not your typical tropical system. The disturbance we've been tracking for the last week is now officially Subtropical Storm Nicole, and it has its sights set on Florida. This storm is going to be massive, so whether this becomes a hurricane or stays just a subtropical or tropical storm, impacts are going to be major, especially to the Florida coast. We're going to talk about where Nicole is headed. We're going to take a look at that size component and then have an early look at some of the impacts that could be coming to Florida and parts of the southeast U.S. What's up, guys? Meteorologist Jonathan Kegas with you now. We talk and track all things weather on this channel. We are going to do a ton of analysis in this video because there are so many components when it comes to Nicole. The structure, the size, the potential impacts. Stick around for a couple more minutes and we will have an early look at some of those impacts when it comes to Florida. Here is a look at Subtropical Storm Nicole. It is not fully tropical and it's not fully non-tropical, so we have this hybrid system, and that is why Nicole is a subtropical storm at this hour. I'm going to turn my telestration on. You can see this very broad, elongated area of low pressure, and again, it certainly does not have that tropical look. And that is why we have a subtropical storm as of early Monday morning. Here is the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center, and unfortunately, this is coming to Florida. It's just a question of where does it make landfall. It also really doesn't matter because this storm is going to be so big, and anywhere to the north of the center is going to be impacted. More on that in a few minutes. First, though, you're going to notice that Nicole is now forecast to become a hurricane as it closes in on the Bahamas over the next few days. You see it there, Freeport, a 75-mile-per-hour hurricane, Category 1 storm, as of 7 o'clock in the evening on November 9th, so in a couple days. The cone widens out a little bit, still have to determine how strong or how weak and how oriented this big chunk of high pressure is to its north. Again, more on that in a second. But nonetheless, impacts are going to be felt well outside of this cone. That statement has never been more true because of how big this storm is going to be. This setup, the one we're looking at right now, is the one that we hope to avoid for the entirety of hurricane season. Meteorologists know this as the ridge over troubled water setup. We have a big ridge building over the Great Lakes and New England. It's one of the reasons why it has been so warm up in those parts if you're tuning in, but this also literally, as this high pressure builds to the north, blocks any exit route out to sea from any system in the tropics, in this case Nicole, and it also helps to push these things right on into the United States. If you are finding this video helpful, I would love if you hit that thumbs up button. It really does help me out a lot. Also, I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Please post that below in the comments. Models are coming into much better agreement than they were over the weekend. The GFS is actually the front runner here. It nailed the vigorous low-level center, the quick consolidation of what is now Nicole, north of Puerto Rico, and since then, really all of the models have been playing catch-up now to kind of get more in line with that GFS solution, which we're looking at here, and has a landfall closing in on southeast Florida as we get into late Wednesday night and then moving into early Thursday morning. Same kind of deal for the Euro. This is early on Thursday at about 1 a.m., so just after midnight, closing in on southeast Florida. Still a weaker storm than the GFS, but it has been catching up and it has been strengthening this storm. And that is probably the more correct solution at this point, since the GFS has been winning this thing pretty much since the start. Here we go, looking at the icon. This is the furthest north of the three models that I'm showing you. And it's also the strongest, backing that up just a smidge. That's a 992 millibar low. That's pushing hurricane strength. Coming in right around the county line of Brevard County and then moving through. Now, the other part to this is that this could be a long duration event, meaning that this thing gets started Wednesday with a big wind field of tropical storm force winds, and then we're still dealing with this as we move through the afternoon. There's 1 o'clock on Thursday, getting back into the Gulf, and then coming back in, and then moving up into the Carolinas. So this is going to be a long duration event for Florida, and then those conditions deteriorate for the Carolinas starting into the weekend. All right, it's soapbox time. This is going to be a weird storm, an atypical tropical storm or hurricane strike that Floridians are used to. Don't pay attention too much on where exactly this comes ashore because the impacts are going to be extremely widespread and very far removed from the center. This also, again, has the potential to be catastrophic along the coast. We are missing a lot of the protection from Hurricane Ian that wiped out a lot of the sand dunes. This is also going to combine with astronomical high tides known as king tides, which could really make that coastal flooding much worse. Now, to be clear, we obviously don't want a hurricane. If we do have a hurricane coming through, that is just going to add insult to injury because we're going to have a stronger storm. What I'm trying to say is, even though if this is weak, quote unquote, it is still going to have big time impacts because of the sheer size of the storm itself. Look at this thing. This is the European representation of the wind field here. These are sustained tropical storm force winds, specifically where we're looking at that yellow color. And you see the center down by the Bahamas. Look how far north. We're talking all the way up to the North and South Carolina border. We could have tropical storm force winds sustained. Forget about the wind gusts. We're looking even about 24 hours before landfall. Tropical storm force wind gusts moving onshore into Florida. So when I say that this is big, and again, a bigger storm has a lot more oomph, if you will, to push that water inland. When you combine that with the fact that we've lost a lot of our sand dunes, a lot of our coastal protection post-Hurricane Ian, this is not good news. We could be looking at a major coastal flooding situation, especially in Florida. The wind situation, look at this. I'm starting this late Monday night into early Tuesday morning. Along the coast, we already have wind gusts north of 30 miles an hour. Those just go up further. We're about 20 miles an hour inland. Look at this. This is Wednesday morning. Now remember, I showed you where landfall was, at least on the European solution. That was in southeast Florida, all the way into Brevard County, Volusia, Flagler, up towards St. Augustine and Jacksonville. We have wind gusts about 50 miles an hour, extremely far away from the center. Inland towards Orlando, getting into Ocala, we have wind gusts about 30 to 40 miles an hour. And then even for us in Tampa, if you're watching on the west coast of the state, we're talking about wind gusts 25 to 35 miles an hour. Certainly, that's a walk in the park to what we saw with Ian. Nonetheless, we're still talking about wind gusts pushing tropical storm force about 24 hours out. Now, here we go as we move into Thursday, and that's when things get real nasty in terms of the wind. Everybody in Central Florida and certainly on the East Coast, we're seeing wind gusts certainly north of tropical storm force. And then we keep things breezy all the way through Friday. We don't start to see these wind speeds come down until we get into Saturday. But again, the main event of this, the worst of the wind, likely going to be coming from about Wednesday afternoon through Thursday night. We're looking at the rainfall now. This is going to be for the entire event, really through Saturday morning, and we're looking at a widespread 2 to 4 inches of rain. Now, that is according to the European model forecast. We could double that in some cases. Now, the main concern I have when it comes to flooding are certainly poor drainage areas, but also for our friends living along the St. Johns. It has been awful. Some people over the last few days just now getting back into their homes because it's taken that long for the water to recede post-Ian. This is no doubt going to aggravate that flooding. The rivers are likely going to rise a little bit, not to the extent at this point that we saw on Ian, but it will certainly slow the progression, and it will cause the St. Johns River to rise once again. We're also going to be looking at localized flash flooding again, and depending upon where and how exactly this storm comes in, these numbers could go up big time. So again, this is something we really need to pay close attention to, even inland. So again, this is not your typical tropical storm strike here in Florida because we're likely going to have some of that hybrid feel to this, and the wind field with this storm is just so big. Impacts are going to be the highest with Nicole around the center, and then to the north, the southern side of this system is going to be the weaker side. If you want to stay up to date on the information, or you just love talking and tracking weather, we would love to have you in this community. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the alert bell. You'll never miss when we post new content, and you'll be along with us for the ride. Thanks for watching. Please stay safe. We'll keep you posted and catch you next time.